Welcome to a pivotal moment in the world of broadcast as we proudly present the Men's Mental Health Show featuring the renowned Larry Mabry in collaboration with the Maassen Group. This essential exploration of men's mental health wouldn't be possible without the invaluable support of RainerAvenueRadio.world. Now, let's dive into this crucial conversation with Larry Mabry and the Maassen Group. Your mental well-being matters. Here's Larry Mabry.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's been a minute. I just want to kind of tap in. So welcome to the July 28th, 2025. Today, I know the last couple of weeks I said I would talk about some things. Life always, life, right? It comes in and changes some things. And so recently I've had some interesting things kind of happen to my family, and been back and forth to Michigan, and had some I'm still working through some life lessons. And so today I wanted to discuss unconditional love for men. I think that's really important. And so I think for me, kind of growing up, you always hear people say, oh, have that agape love, that unconditional love. It sounds good when you say it fast. However, recently I've had some interesting situations with my mom, my real dad, where I've seen that in action. And I wanted to kind of talk about that because I meet with a lot of clients and we talk about healing and processing some things, different traumas and things of that nature. And I don't really think that the unconditional love aspect is really talked about a lot. I think as men, sometimes, we kind of go in dealing with challenges with the ego. It becomes competitive. We feel like we have to win. And, as I get older in life and I realize it's really, really important that we kind of shy away from that and have more compassion, understanding, and unconditional love. And so before I kind of jump into it, let me bring you guys abreast of kind of what's been going on. So as for those people that's been tapped in, you guys know, back in September 2024, my stepdad passed away. And then shortly after, a revered colleague of mine, Dr. Carter, passed away like in October. So that was kind of a blow. These were like mentors to me. I talk about the Jedi Council, individuals that just was paramount. Now, my stepdad, obviously, a little bit more because I grew up with him ever since I was 5. He came in my life. It kind of helped me become the man I am today. And so, just taught me a lot of things. Now, this is the thing that's really interesting. As we grow, we mature, we realize that we're not perfect. We all do the best we can. We have our idiosyncrasies, we have our imperfections, we have those things that we work through. And I think sometimes we forget about that unconditional love aspect. And recently, around July 4th, I had a family reunion in Michigan. And in lieu of my stepdad, I kind of told my mom, hey, I want to spend more time. I want to make sure that, I'm more present because life is too short. And we'd want to spend quality time with family and friends while they're alive rather than just, hitting them up on their eulogies and when they're gone. And so I just thought about that and realized, my mom is in her 70s. Everything's cool. But I was like, let me really acknowledge the quality time and spend some time with her and kind of show her support. And so anyway, I decided, hey, you know what? I'm gonna go to the family reunion. That was July 4th, yada, yada. Everything was cool. So I roll out there. And then as we were about to, the actual family reunion was about an hour or so away from where my mom lived in Detroit. And so as we were about to jump in the car, ready to roll out, bling, 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 get a phone call. Lo and behold, my real dad was rushed to the hospital. My mom looked at me, I looked at her, and she's like, hey, this may have been the reason why you came down to Michigan. I looked at her, smiled, and said, okay, here we go. Felt like I had to throw on my Superman cape and go into action, right? And so anyway, go to the hospital, see my dad. He's surprised, like, what the heck? But long story short, his care provider basically was reported to not be very respectful. And long story short, we had to move quickly. So once I figured out what the issue was, again, I'm in Washington State. Didn't think it would be advantageous for him to come way out here, considering that he pretty much grew up in Michigan. So once I made sure I understood what the doctors needed and that type of thing, I did not want him to go back into that household. So I hit my mom up. Hey, mom, here's a scenario. Now, granted, mind you, the love of her life had passed away shortly before. And so I felt like, okay, this is interesting. So long story short, she's like, you know what? That's your dad. I'm cool. We forgave each other. I don't have a problem with it. This will be like a transition spot, and he needs to be in a spot that's loving. And so I said, okay, I agree. No problem. So we're kind of tag teaming. And so I'm sharing this because, my mom basically kind of expressed some things to me, and it really got me thinking about unconditional love, And so I just realized that, my stepdad had took in a woman with 2 kids, gave us unconditional love, produced a child. And so it was 3 of us, but, we always felt like we were all together, always. Whenever he would introduce me to people, my stepdad, it was always like, hey, this is my son. So I always felt that. And so with all this, I realized something. My mom and I had a conversation, and she's like, yo, when you lose somebody, where does the love go? And so I want to kind of throw that out there, right? So where does the love go, right? If you have love in your family, love in your heart, where does it go when a loved one passes away? And so it touched my heart because, she just unconditionally like, hey, we got it. No problem. Has it been easy? No, it has not been easy. However, I want to share that it's actually been very, I would say, gratifying to my soul because it's helped me understand some things deeper with my mother, as well as some things with my dad, and just having compassion, right? Have a lot of compassion. And so basically we're kind of working some things out right now, as far as his finances, as far as, medications, times with the doctor. Oops,
I
sorry
found
about
this
that.
on the web for as
Sorry
far
about
as
that.
financing.
My phone decided to pop in there. But anyway, we've been kind of connecting and, really working together to see what we need to do to make sure we show unconditional love. So first of all, I want to ask you guys, what does unconditional love mean to you? Right. I mean, again, it sounds great when you say it fast, but I want you guys to chime in and let me know, what are your thoughts behind unconditional love, right? There was a lot of trauma that I experienced. My dad left when I was younger. I was 5. I've forgiven him. My mom's forgiven him. We're working through some things. My dad and my sister are trying to work through some things. I would say he's at a space where he's open. He's communicating his faults and really having I would say, taking accountability for some things, which is really cool to see. And so as I get older, I'm realizing that I'm very thankful because even though, his health isn't the best, we have this opportunity to kind of work together. But I'm just curious to see, like, what does unconditional love mean to you guys, right? Would you be able to, take somebody that maybe you had a very tarnished relationship in the past, but now they're in a very dire straight situation, and you just take them in your house and basically roll up sleeves and do what you need to do? That's very necessary. I would say for me, it was very powerful because it showed me another aspect of my mother in terms of having unconditional love. And so why am I bringing this up? Well, in our world, we see a lot of social media when it comes to negative types of things. We have certain people in power where we're seeing the ego in full effect. And so, I'm curious to see, like, when have you seen or experienced unconditional love, right? Where even though there may have been some animosity or some struggles from the past, you do something that's very difficult, which is basically have unconditional love. So I was just curious to see, what does it mean to you, right? And so as I'm sharing that with you, I'm working through some things with myself, as well as some concerns I may have with certain people. And based on that example that my mom has been showing me, it basically kind of convicted my heart. Like, okay, Larry, you need to do some things a little bit better. It's something that my mom shared that I wanted to kind of share with you guys that I thought was really profound. She said, doing the difficult things is hard, but that's kind of why you need to do it, which I thought was so like deep, right? Because a lot of times the hard things are the things we run away from, right? We want to make things easy. But if it's the right thing to do, even though it's hard, you still have to do it. And so that part really, really resonated with me from a heart level. And so I just wanted to kind of share that with you. But anyway, so real quick, what does unconditional love mean to you guys? So um, as we're looking at unconditional love, looking at it through a masculine lens, I want us to kind of explore the cultural definitions versus the spiritual truths behind it, right? Um, is love a reward or is it presence? Let's talk about that. Is it a reward or is it presence? And so that has been very interesting because, it's cost me a lot of finances to kind of go back and forth. Um, his unfortunately the person who was taking care of him took some money from his account. It was overdrawn. Um, so I had to kind of make sure I made it whole. He basically only gets funds once a month, which is limited funds. He has some expenses and things that he has to take care of. And so once I kind of got that, I was like, okay, let me kind of take over this and make sure I know what's going on. And once I saw that, I said, hey, just do that. But, we're dealing with spiritual truths versus um, cultural definitions and truths, right? And I believe that what you put out, you get back. And so, how were you brought up as far as love, right? Was it conditioning? Was it an emotional type of armor? How did your upbringing affect your love, right? Were you um, loving sports? Was it certain societal norms that kind of helped shape your love? Was it emotional availability in boys and men? And so I wanted to kind of address this because a lot of clients I talk to, we talk about this. And so my dad was not around when I was younger. However, my stepdad was there. And so it was cool for me to see through his love with my mother. He never put a hand on her. It was always a loving response. Every once in a while, when she would get out of pocket, he would have to let her know what's up. But I really appreciate the way he did it. He would just, call her by her actual name. And she would know at that moment, oh, okay, I crossed the line, right? Because we all have limits, right? Even though we have unconditional love, we still have to respect the boundaries to make sure there's understanding. And so with unconditional love, you have to constantly be mindful of what your heart is telling you to do, but also, there was an issue, well, not issue, but there was a situation. My mom and I had some words as far as how we should handle some things. And then she kind of came back and was like, hey, God kind of told me I need to do this. And I felt her. Right. And so I would say, you have to constantly kind of reassess like which person's leading, right? Are you leading more from the ego or are you leading more from your heart? And I mean, it's a constant tussle, right? And, you know, typically the heart is going to outweigh everything. But the question is, are you checking in with yourself daily? You have to do that every day to make sure you're doing the right thing for your heart. Now, for me, how I looked at it was, you know, my mom and I had a real good conversation. I felt like, my stepdad, although he passed before my mom, he left my mom in a very decent shape. I mean, financially, she's good. Emotionally, she's cool. I mean, obviously, there's some healing with that, but we all know that that's part of life. However, what I really appreciated was, they really, really worked really hard to make sure that the family was solid. And so what I take from that is, with my dad's situation, it I really had this desire to make sure that, as he gets older, I want to make sure that his name is going with honor. And so my mom and I are in agreement with that. And even though I don't have any children, I feel like at some point, if I get to that point where, I need type of support for my mental faculties or legs or whatever. I just hope that, God will kind of support me in that regard too. So anyway, I just want to put that out there. So when you have unconditional love, you're always taken care of. And it may not be something that you see initially, but again, what you put out, you get back. Another thing I want to talk about too with unconditional love is masculine worthiness. Let's talk about that. So with that, we breaking cycles of performance-based love or exploring the roots of shame. Really, really, really important. And so as I've been dealing with my dad, there's been some very humbling situations, right? And so my dad has lost a leg. He has to use different types of urinals to go to the restroom. He's having some issues as far as his bladder, so sometimes he just has to go. And so there's been some very humbling, very open situations where I have to kind of support, look out, hide, protect, that type of thing, not take it personal, and just basically have unconditional love and support in that situation. And so it's really forced you to just be grateful, that he's still here, to be supportive, to not judge, and just to show unconditional love in that moment, right? Because again, any of us could be in that situation. Another thing too is, you have to work on the inner work, and let's talk about that for a second. So, are you forgiving yourself, right? So, my dad, we've been working on him walking, and so when I was in Michigan, I took him to the park, and he was telling me some things, and I asked him, I said, "Hey, how was it, when you grew up?" And he shared something with me that I never knew. He had shared that when he was younger, his dad was an alcoholic, and he didn't really show any love to him, and so that really gave me a snapshot as far as what you put out is what you get back, and so um, how I looked at that was, okay, so you didn't receive love growing up, so you didn't really know how to give it towards self or towards me. And I would say when I was younger, I was a little upset with that. I mean, I'm more healed now, but looking at it from a more mature point of view, now it's like, okay, can I demonstrate the love that I've learned, and the love that I am within myself? And so it's been a pretty interesting situation. I feel like it's allowed us to kind of have some really candid conversations and a lot of laughter, but also gave me a lot of compassion for me to understand, we can only do what we know. And so if we grow up and we've never experienced love, then we have to connect with somebody who shows it so that we can learn it, so that we can actually adopt it for ourselves. And then sometimes we kind of get caught up on survival mode, or we don't realize, what we don't realize. Also, too, think about like, what are you doing to nurture yourself? Really, really important. And so, um, depending on the era that you were raised, that can be really confusing. So I know a lot of gentlemen I talk to, we talk about sports, we talk about certain hobbies, we talk about bigger houses and bigger careers and things of that nature. And yeah, that's cool, but I'm talking about the intangible things, right? So just going for a walk with yourself, just sitting with yourself and really acknowledging some things within yourself. And for those people who may know, I shared this before, but I can share this now. So if you want to work on some things as far as healing yourself, you can do something called the Ho'oponopono meditation. Let me tell you, very, very powerful. And basically what you would do is you would say these four things: I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, and I love you. And you're saying this to your inner child, the young person, the aspect of yourself that maybe you neglected, you didn't really take care of because you didn't know. And so a lot of times, we go through life and we don't really tell those people that we experience that we appreciate them. And so when's the last time you just acknowledge yourself, right? And just this gives you an opportunity away from the hustle and bustle, away from, hanging out with the boys, away from trying to build an empire, and just sitting with yourself more from a loving, compassionate self, and just say, hey, I'm sorry, right? You're apologizing for the times that, you didn't honor yourself, You're saying, please forgive me, for acknowledging the aspect that, okay, you fell short. Maybe you got upset and you responded to something a little bit more cruel than you really wanted to. Um, and then you say, I'm sorry, right? To acknowledge the fact that we're not perfect. And you're looking for compassion, and whatever you look for, you receive. And then you'll make sure people kind of give you that too. And then just, I love you, right? And just acknowledging that you love an aspect of yourself. That doesn't mean you're perfect, right? We're not saying we're perfect, but whatever you focus on grows. And so if you can show gratitude towards self, you can show appreciation towards self, if you can say you love yourself, and then please forgive me. Those are very, 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 very powerful types of things to put out there to kind of change the trajectory of what you're going to accept in your life, right? And you're just going to feel a lot better. If you do that, I guarantee that, right? If you do that every day for at least 30 days, your life will change. You'll probably change it within a week. And for those individuals that are interested, that would like that meditation, feel free. You can shoot me an email at the Maassen Group 1@gmail.com. Again, that's the Maassen Group 1@gmail.com. And just say, hey, would love that meditation. Okay. So feel free to just shoot me an email on that and I'll make sure I get that to you. Okay. All right. Real quick. So today, again, we're talking about unconditional love. What does that look like for you? Right? Is it beneficial? Have you had some challenges with some people, and then once you kind of came to terms and worked it out, you notice that you feel a lot better. You feel like you have a healthy relationship. And also too, when you have compassion, what I notice too is you notice that you're a little bit more softer. That doesn't mean you're soft, but I would say that you're a little bit more softer in terms of, like, if you have children, kind of understanding their point of view, um, seeing kind of where they're coming from. It's also showing your empathy, which I think is important. Um, it's okay to be strong, but also be loving. So I just want to, put a shout out to my stepdad for that, for really showing me, how to have what they call the quiet strength. That means that, he was the type of man, he would never need to yell, you know, he would definitely let you know the boundaries when you would cross them. And he would definitely check you when you needed to be checked. But what I really respect and appreciate about him is he would always circle back around and say, hey, did you learn a lesson? Did you understand why I did that? It wasn't me doing anything to exert power. It was for me to teach you a lesson, because as you man up, these are lessons that you're going to need to know. So I say I appreciate him for that. And as my dad and I kind of connect, I realize that I almost feel like it's reversal, right? Like he's teaching me some things, but I feel like I'm kind of like in the parental role, which is kind of weird. But at the same time, it's very humbling, because I realize that, he's doing the best he can from what he knew. So, meet people where they're at, right? And as I communicate more with him and realize, hey, he's in pain. He came from an area down south to live in Detroit, and basically felt like he was fitting for himself. He met my mom. They broke off. There's some just irreconcilable differences. She met the love of her life when I was 5. They built a beautiful, loving relationship of love, compassion, unity, teamwork, which I'm very thankful for. But at the same time, here we fast forward to life, 50 years. And then, okay, so now dealing with my real dad, I'm like, wow, it's humbling, because I'm very thankful for some things that my mom, some steps that she took. Very thankful for my stepdad. I'm also thankful for my dad too. I think he did the best he could. I just want to say, hey, Dad, you're listening, love you, as well as my stepdad, love you, Mom, as well, love you. And also, I just want to say I appreciate the listeners that have been listening, give me some support. Thank you for that. A lot of the gentlemen in my life, Dan, you're listening, thank you, love you too, bro. Andrew, appreciate you, bro, love you. And just, we all affect everybody. And so I just want to say I appreciate those individuals that have been loving, supportive, and showing me different aspects of what to me a loving man looks like. And so, again, what are you doing to show unconditional love? Right? Real quick before we wrap it up, couple things I want you to think about. If you're dealing with a situation and you're noticing that you're triggered, take a deep breath. In that moment, take a step back and just ask yourself, how can I be loving in the situation? So if your natural response, is to pounce or to say something negative, just take a deep breath, take a step back, and just ask yourself, how can I be loving in this situation? Is it going to be easy? No, not in the beginning. However, if you do it more often, you'll find that you'll have fun with it. You'll find that you'll be more loving towards that individual. And you'll notice that they'll be more loving towards you because they'll have no other choice. And things will just flow a lot easier. Okay. So, all right, real quick, guys. So as we kind of get to a close, make sure you guys tune in to the next show, which will be Better Together and Living Powerfully, with our friend Dr. Tracy Harrell. She'll be on from 6 to 7 o'clock. Make sure you guys check her out. And also, too, make sure you guys be aware of the Seafair weekend 2 concerts at Columbia City Theater. That'll be August 1st. That'll be Reggae Night. And then August 2nd will be Lenny Kravitz tribute. So make sure you guys take a look at that. That's going to be awesome. So we got a few more days. So make sure you guys put a shout out there. All right, guys. So without further ado, I want to say appreciate you guys. Remember to show unconditional love as you go throughout your day. Without further ado, peace. What's that?